welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom, and this is going to be my kind of answers to my Q&A video that I did about a month or so ago. Now this was part of a contest to celebrate my 5-year anniversary on YouTube. Now I'm not going to do the contest drawing in this video. I figured I would split the videos up and do them separately, rather than kind of having to put if people don't want to watch these Q&As, they could just go straight to the contest video. Plus I need my my works computer with the printer to be able to print out all the names so I can draw them out the hat, which I haven't done yet. So I'm going to do all the names ready, print them out from at work, because I don't have a printer unfortunately, and then I'll do the actual drawing probably over the weekend, and obviously post that video once I've done that. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that did ask me a question, and obviously we'll get on to your we'll get onto the drawing very soon. But let's talk about these questions first of all. I think there's some pretty interesting ones, and we'll discuss all things basically, kind of movie related and otherwise. So let's get on with these questions, shall we? In no particular order. So the first question we're going to answer is from Deadly Dames Horror Extravaganza, a horror channel from Bonnie, Scotland, and they ask, which horror film truly scares you and why? And my answer to this one would be the movie Eden Lake. Now this was a story about a couple that want to have an idyllic breakaway in this kind of lake area, but they're menaced by a group of youths. In the UK we call these guys chavs. And what makes this film scary for me is this is a very real possibility. We do have these kind of like the youths who really just get a kick out of random violence, and I've seen it happen in the UK. I mean, I haven't seen murders obviously, but I have seen these kind of attacks on kind of members of the public, and it's a scary thing to think, you know, if you're out in the kind of the middle of nowhere and you just have this kind of group of youths who take it upon themselves to cause you bodily harm, and of course at that point they cross a line and don't want to, you know, would rather kind of go all the way and cover their tracks rather than to kind of let you go. So scary prospects, more so than kind of ghosts and ghoulies and monsters, which obviously aren't real. This is a very real possibility, and something that probably people have experienced in their lives. So that would be my answer to that question. Buckaroobanzai, who is a contributor to this channel and does many reviews for me. Go check his channel out. He asks, which terrible low-budget film with bad CGI have you seen would you like to see remade as $100 million budget and done properly with largely practical effects, and who would direct and star in it? Now my answer to this one is a movie that I have actually reviewed on this channel that I actually do quite like. I don't know if I'd say it's terrible, but it could do with a higher budget. And that movie is Dark Prince, The Legend of Dracula, which I also think is called Dark Prince, The True Story of Dracula, and kind of stuff like that. And this one stars Rudolph Martin, Peter Weller and Jane March, and was a made-for-TV historical kind of fantasy movie really that was detailed the real-life person who actually inspired Dracula. This was Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Dracula. And this is obviously a made-for-TV film, so it's kind of a little bit small in scale. But I would like to see it as a Braveheart-style movie, which kind of chronicles the life of Vlad the Impaler, and really kind of like goes into his kind of relationships with his brother, and things like that. And the interesting thing is with his people as well, obviously he's kind of made out to be this terrible guy, which of course he was, and very kind of brutal, but his countrymen all looked at him as a hero, so it was a very kind of interesting dynamic. And he defended a very small country of Wallachia against the Ottoman Empire because he was so vicious basically. And I think that'd be really fantastic to kind of have this in a kind of a big budget movie. And in regards to who should star in him, I don't really know, if I'm honest. I would probably like to say someone regionally appropriate to that area, without kind of like, you know, killing myself finding what actors are Eastern European. And probably the best one off the top of my head would be the guy who plays Jaime Lannister in the Game of Thrones. He's not exactly from the area, but he is European, and I would like to have someone from that area. As who to direct it, I would maybe go with Neil Marshall, who directed Dog Soldiers and Descent, but he's also directed kind of the big battle sequences episodes from Game of Thrones, so that would probably be my choice for him. Next question is from Daydreams and Nightmares, and these guys have actually won a competition from me in the past, so thanks for taking part in this one. And he asks, is there a movie poster that you don't own that you would like to have in your collection? Well, I don't actually collect movie posters, to be honest with you, so I don't really have any movie posters in my collection currently. Well, I do have one framed picture of The Conjuring, but that is literally it. That is all in my apartment. When I was younger, I did have a few posters, and to answer this question, I would actually say a poster that I did have once upon a time, and that was the original poster for the movie Dragon Slayer. This was a Disney Paramount co-production, I believe, that's kind of long since been forgotten, and the dragon in this was incredible. And it's kind of a boring movie, if I'm completely honest, apart from when we see the kind of the dragon at the end and at the beginning, but the middle was kind of boring. However, the dragon itself is incredible. It's called Vermithrax and is actually probably one of the best dragons that I've ever seen on screen. And the poster here is incredible. It's just an incredible piece of art. You know, the old school kind of like drawings that we used to see. And look, would be, you know, it's a good fantasy poster, but obviously it's actually connected to a film as well. And, you know, it's got kind of like our hero on the front, obviously in the movie played by Peter McNichol, and he clearly isn't that much of an action hero, but, you know, the poster, it looks good. And like I said, I used to have this poster in a proper movie one as well, and I don't know what happened to it. It was a long, long time ago. But if I were to have a kind of like a poster up, I would probably go with that one there again. Punjab Hero asks, what are my 3 favourite movie franchises and why? So I would go with, the first one would be the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm a big comics fan, and mainly a Marvel fan within those comics, so I'm a huge, you know, fan of these type of characters, these superheroes. My channel started, my very first videos were showing my Marvel Blu-ray and DVD collections. They were my very first videos back in the day. And I would go with this because it's obviously, it's the, you know, one of the biggest franchises there are, 20 or so movies now, so it's like watching a TV show in a weird way. It's kind of this mega budget TV show with these characters that you've been kind of following over these kind of last 10 years or so. So you're really invested in these characters. And I'm really, you know, liking having all these, they're interacting and they're crossing paths and stuff like that. So definitely the MCU would be my number 1. Number 2, I would probably go with the Evil Dead franchise. The Evil Dead 2 was probably one of my favourite films, if not the favourite film for most of my life. And I really like the Evil Dead 1 as well. I do enjoy Army of Darkness. I'm less fussed on the TV show, if I'm honest. I think it concentrates on the wrong things on the Evil Dead franchise, if I'm being brutally honest. I know a lot of people like it. I don't mind it, but I'm not a huge fan. But nonetheless, it's one of my favourite franchises, and I enjoy the first 2 movies so much, and do get a kick out of the third one as well. The remake, you know, it's okay. And my other one I would say is kind of similar, really, and that's the Fright Night franchise, which people may not think of as a franchise, really, but it actually has 4 official films in it. The original 2 movies that kind of lead on from each other. The original Fright Night is my number 1 movie. It always kind of toggled between that and Evil Dead, but these days I would say Fright Night is probably my number 1 favourite movie. But also, Fright Night 2 would be in my top 10 because I do love that movie as well. It's nearly as good as the original. The remake I enjoyed, obviously. It wasn't a patch on the original. And the kind of like the second remake, which was called Fright Night 2, but was actually a remake of the first one. Yeah, well, you know. Some Fright Night is better than any, I would say. But yeah, I enjoy that franchise, and they are my top 3. So, on to the next question. Todd All Things Horror. Great YouTuber, I've been following him for a while. If I could be a character from any movie, who would it be and why? Now, I guess you would probably say, oh, do you know, I'd be a superhero or something along the lines of that. But I would go with Arthur from the 2 movies. Obviously, you had the original with Dudley Moore and the remake with Russell Brand. Purely because this guy has essentially got unlimited money. He's got no responsibility and can just live his life doing whatever he likes. And, yeah, that would be pretty cool if you ask me. So, on to the next question. And we have it from Trinidad Lara, who has entered a contest of mine before. Hello, Laura. Hope you're well. And she asks, what is my favourite adaptation of a horror book? Now, I think the temptation here would be to go for something more recent and say something, you know, that has been made into a film recently. But I would have to say I'd go with a classic, and that is Dracula by Bram Stoker, of course. And this I read in my formative years, and it really kind of got me into partly into the horror genre itself, really. And obviously from the book, I obviously watched the TV shows and the kind of the movies, the old black and white films and stuff like that. And as I've already mentioned, I've kind of a really big fan of the historical person who was behind Dracula. So the Dracula book by Bram Stoker I really loved, and that really has inspired me to really enjoy horror, media essentially. So Dracula is probably my all-time favourite horror adaptation. Okay, Tom H thinks he wants to ask about horror anthology sets and what's my favourite. Now, I have to say, I'm not a massive fan of anthology movies, purely because I feel there is very little characterisation that you can do in a short compared to a feature. But to answer the question, I really enjoyed the Creepshow movies, at least the first two. The third one, not so much. And in particular, I really enjoyed the Raft segment out of the second film, although I feel the first film is better overall. Now, I also had this movie I remember called The Willies, which I have not seen for a long, long time. But I remember I really liked it when I did see it when I was a lot younger. Maybe I should revisit it one day. And I remember quite liking that. I don't know if it's any good nowadays, I'll be honest. But I do remember that film being fairly good as well. But for a rule of thumb, I'll watch anthologies, but I'm not a massive fan, if I am completely honest. Retro Horror asks, what is the worst film in your collection? The worst movie in my collection that I can think of is a movie called The Hospital, which came out in 2013. And it's a movie that I got because I enjoy haunted asylum movies, things like Grave Encounters. But this film was rubbish. It's about this few guys who want to do like a kind of ghost hunters kind of thing in this hospital, and they kind of basically get a load of people together to try and film ghosts and such in there. But there are ghosts in there, but they also happen to be this kind of serial killer that lives in there as well. And the movie is one rape scene after another. It's just got loads of the movie's like 90% rape scenes. And I feel it was unnecessary. And if you want to get the point that the guy's a rapist, you can show a rape scene maybe, but you don't need to show like 5 rape scenes. It just doesn't. It just kind of goes. It's just exploitative from that point on. And I know it's probably got its fans, but I thought it was a poorly made film and just an excuse for the filmmakers to leer over women and actresses ultimately. And the actual everything about this movie was bad. I mean, the effects were terrible. We do see the ghost. The acting was atrocious. It's very little story. I mean, when I review films, I do try and kind of at least look at what positives are there, because it's very difficult to say a film is crap overall. There's normally some things that you can say that are maybe done pretty well, even if it's like the costuming, the lighting, whatever. But this film, there was nothing. It was one of the few films I've absolutely, completely slagged off. So that is The Hospital from 2013. Horror Fan Man asks, what is the best film you have ever done a review of? Now, I've taken this as what is the best quality film rather than what was my favourite film, because my favourite film would be Fright Night. However, if I had to say what is the best quality film, I would probably go with Leon, aka The Professional, which was actually the very first review I ever did. Now, I don't tend to review what a lot we call prestige pictures, Oscar Beatty type pictures. It's not what the channel's about. So I haven't reviewed a lot of what people class as the kind of like the classics. And if I had reviewed Jaws, I probably would have said Jaws, but I haven't actually reviewed the original Jaws on this channel. So I would go with Leon, purely because I think that movie is the characterization of that movie is fantastic. I think the performances are great, the direction is fantastic. It's got some really great action sequences. The score is incredible. So to me, that's a high quality film. So that's probably what I would go for in regards to what I think the best movie is. Bobby Lapire asks, why movie reviews versus books, toys, etc.? And that's purely because my passion has always been movies for my adult life. When I was younger, I kind of was more into kind of music and stuff. And although I have collected some toys, Funko Pops and stuff like that, they've really been a small part. And even when VHSs were the kind of the media, I used to collect VHS and had stacks and stacks of them. So I've had so many kind of movies, and obviously these days I get sent screeners and stuff like that. So it really is the kind of the the medium of choice. The next question is from Handsome Asshole. Fantastic name there. Do you remember the very first film you saw in the movie theatre, or the cinema as you call it here in the UK? And that would be the original Star Wars. This is it's literally one of my earliest memories ever, let alone earliest film memory. I saw it with my father, and we went and saw the original Star Wars when it was released for the first time in the UK. And I would have only been about 3 or 4, wouldn't have been very old. And, you know, I don't remember a lot about it, but I know that I went and saw it with him. And, yeah, so it was kind of like my first foray into geekdom, and it was one of my earliest memories ever. So that's basically The Wicker Boy, and a great YouTuber, does lots of kind of horror updates if you haven't seen him. If I had a chance to direct a horror film, what kind of genre would it be? What would it be about? Now, I don't profess to know anything about directing, but I had an idea for a movie. I've actually got an idea for a few films and stuff, and I have chatted to a few directors about ideas, and they've actually asked me. So I've given them a few ideas for no charge, I'll point out. One of them was this one. So you've heard of the term creepypasta. So my idea was to have a literal creepypasta, and what it would be some kind of witch has kind of like a some kind of like concoction, kind of like a spell in these kind of like herbs, and this somehow gets mixed into a pasta dish, a spaghetti bolognese or something like that, and this causes the actual spaghetti to come alive and go on a kind of a murderous rampage. So you essentially have this spaghetti monster that will be kind of climbing up the walls like a kind of like massive spider almost, and you know, put its kind of like spaghettis in people's noses and make them choke and strangle them and stuff like that. So you'd have this spaghetti monster, and it would be called creepypasta, and it's basically just to have a kind of an amusing pun on the name there. So that would be my horror movie pitch. Obviously, it would be a low-budget B movie, but there you go. Derek Johns asks, who is my favourite director? I've actually answered this question in someone else's contest video, and the answer is I don't have a favourite director. I honestly would judge films by their individual merits, not by who's directing them. I answered the question with that answer, but I also say if I have to pick one, I'd say Sam Raimi. He's done the Evil Dead films, he's done Spider-Man films, which I love, but there's films of his that I don't like, including Spider-Man 3. But there's plenty of others as well. So I do not have a favourite director. I purely like films based on their each individual merits rather than, you know, who has directed it, basically. Wolfman's got nards. You can probably guess what his favourite horror film is. What is your favourite horror film of the 80s and 90s? Well, I've mentioned that Fright Night is my favourite horror film of all time, and that was an 80s movie, so that would be my answer for the 80s horror film. In regards to the 90s, I would say the movie Brain Dead, or Dead Alive as it's also known, directed by Peter Jackson. It's a really fun style zombie movie, splatter movie with over-the-top kind of like special effects. It's kind of like horror comedy, really. It's pretty out there, but it's a lot of fun. I haven't seen it in a long time, actually. I did buy a special edition Blu-ray of it that I gave away in a contest. I kind of regret that now, but there you go. So that would be my 90s horror. Blu-ray Ben, obviously a long time subscriber, as I have been to his channel. Have you ever thought about giving up the channel? If so, why? How did I motivate myself not to stop and continue? To be honest with you, I've never thought about stopping. I've never been kind of like, you know, wanting to give it up at all. I've always enjoyed doing it. If I did ever, it'd purely be for time restraints, to be honest with you. I do work full-time, and I simply sometimes struggle to kind of keep up with stuff. I mean, I'll get sent bunches of movies and stuff to review, and I'm thinking, I don't have time to do them all sometimes. So this is sometimes why I get other contributors to do stuff for me. You know, there's people who do reviews for this channel. But I've never kind of thought about giving up, and if I ever did, it'd purely be because I just don't have the time to do it anymore. Next question, Screen Stars. My question is, what hobbies have I got other than movies and YouTube? Well, I'll be honest, movies and YouTube probably are the biggest hobbies that I have, but I am a big fan of historical places. Like, you know, I like visiting ruins, castles, that sort of thing. If I ever get a chance to kind of go out anywhere, I do like to check out the kind of the old architecture and kind of historical monuments and stuff like that. sounds kind of boring, but on the kind of maybe the flip side of that, I do have somewhat of a social life, and I like going out with my mates, out in the beers, having a few beers in town. We've gone out as we've kept the geek thing going alive, though. Been out in costumes a few times. When I was younger, I was massively into kind of like heavy metal, so my life pretty much revolved around heavy metal, really. And I guess the other thing is kind of, you know, I'm a single guy these days, so I kind of do enjoy the dating game and all that. So going out with a kind of a lady to a nice restaurant is also kind of fun. Stu and Dave's channel of Geekitude. Which movie am I looking forward to most this year? That would be Infinity War, the culmination of all these kind of Marvel characters coming together. Can't wait to see that movie. I'm sure it will be absolutely awesome. And I really enjoyed Civil War and The Winter Soldier, who has the same director. 21, and this is from 81 Hupe. What other TV movie icon would you have used if the Intoxicate Dalek wasn't available? To be honest with you, the first one that came up in the Google search, if I'm completely honest. Then I have a bonus question that I was definitely on the in the comments when I checked, but since as I'm recording this, it's disappeared. So someone's deleted this one, but it did say, where in the UK am I from? And I can tell you I'm from Southampton, which is a south coast town, probably most famous for being the place where the Titanic left from to go to New York. So right on the south coast of the UK. Yeah, but I have lived. I mean, I haven't lived here all my life. I've lived mostly in the south of the UK, in different areas, but Southampton for the last 18 years. Okay, that is the questions. So I just want to say a big thanks to everyone who took the time to ask a question, and I will see you again in the contest drawing video. Bye for now.